Hi, everybody. Good morning. Monica, that was really interesting. I look forward to reaching out to you and having a conversation. Seems like we have much in common. I'm Susie Washington Smyth. I live on Saturna Island. You can see Lucy Quayle. She's our science advisor, also works for Fisheries and Oceans and is one of Ruth's acolytes, one of her brilliant master's students who did her field work on Saturna. And Dr. Sanjay Srivastava is online. Sanjay, do you want to turn your video on for a second so people can see you? He's our data scientist as well, and is salivating at the opportunity to talk with people about the use of hydrophones. We in the Southern Gulf Islands Whale Sighting Network are people who live on Saturna, Pender, and Main Islands in British Columbia. And we're actively interested in protecting all the whales in the Salish Sea. They're our nearest neighbors, and we want to make sure that they're safe and well fed. Ruth asked us today to explain how our citizen science network is organized and how we collect and manage our data, I think in an effort to give you some confidence in the consistency of how we do it. Before I do that, I thought it might be helpful from an ecological perspective to talk about the eastern end of Boundary Pass. It's effectively the center of the Salish Sea. The waters from the Fraser River outflow, the Strait of Georgia, Puget Sound, Juan de Fuca all meet at East Point on Saturna Island. This is both a tidal interface and an upwelling. And of course, most of you know that water rises, the water that rises to the surface is colder, rich in nutrients, meaning that these surface waters have high biological productivity, which of course affects the food chain, and that ultimately affects whales. In 2019, which is when we organized, and it was really a result of the federal government's lack of public consultation with respect to the interim sanctuary zones that were located off Saturna and Pender Island. Island communities decided to organize to gain a better understanding of the cetacean patterns around the Southern Gulf Islands and to determine the efficacy of the ISS as a conservation management tool. And by that, I mean everything from education to enforcement. And we wanted to understand the effectiveness, the possibility of effectiveness of the echo vessel slowdown and other mitigation measures. So we asked for help from our friends. Specifically, I want to give a talk about SIMRIS, the Saturna Island Marine Education and Research Society. We couldn't be who we are without their administrative and scientific support. They've really provided us a platform and all kinds of help to make it possible for us to do our work. If you want to find out more information about us, I suggest you go to simris.ca and you can find out both about SIMRIS if you don't know about them already and about our whale sighting network. I also want to highlight our work with OceanWise, the BC Cetacean Sighting Network. They have a well-developed, well-articulated whale platform that allows people to enter whale sightings in and around British Columbia. They're also directly have a network with the RAS system that relays information to those commercial vessels in Georgia Strait and Boundary Pass. They help train us to use their cetacean tracking system and work with us to adapt it for our project. And so as a result, we can now aggregate and disaggregate data for islands, for specific islands, and for all three islands. I should also mention that they allowed us to build in redundancy into our data collection to ensure consistency and accuracy. And I also say by using their platform, we've ensured that our data collection is separate from our analysis. And I want to speak about our analysis shortly. We couldn't be here today without SFU and specifically Ruth. She's made it possible to have 3 years of brilliant young master's students conduct whale research at East Point on Saturna Island and has provided us with ongoing scientific support. What is perhaps most significant about this is that while these students had a specific focus and time frame for sighting whales, we, the sighting network, had a benchmark to compare our data with that of the SFU researchers to assess accuracy of report. And I'm happy to say that we have over 3 years, about 95% agreement. So this applies to whale sightings as well as vessel infractions in the marine sanctuary zones, fishing violations, and marine mammal infractions. And last but hardly least, we have a close working relationship with Parks Canada and Fisheries and Oceans, the Whale Desk. They've provided us with laser range finders and training for monitoring and compliance on and also on-site support on a yearly basis. This is important for both accurate reporting of whale sightings, but also vessel infractions in the ISED. You can't talk about whales in the Salish Sea without also talking about vessels. So it was really important for us to be able to see, in fact, how successful these sanctuary zones are. So infractions in the whale interim sanctuary zones have been a big part of our tracking network. Whale watching infractions also, we've been able to track and monitor with using long lenses and these rangefinders, fishing and other marine mammal violations. And I think the other part, both Parks Canada and Fisheries and Oceans have worked with us from the outset in terms of public outreach, because they, like us, recognize that the federal government's communication strategy to inform the public about the interim sanctuary is underwhelming at best. So perhaps what's unique about our net focus twofold. We use Discord, which is a multi-channel communication platform, to share information inter and intra-island. That is, let each other know when whales are coming, what direction they're coming in, and so forth, to store data and photos. And this has been particularly helpful to allow those of us who are become skilled in IDing individuals and to track vessel infractions. And while it's become somewhat Pavlovian for those of us who use it on a regular basis, it's begun a tremendous community builder as well as an effective and efficient communication tool. Here's an example of just how we use it. It's far more multidimensional than using a Facebook or WhatsApp kind of app. We also have two streams of data analysis to make sure that our data is statistically accurate, and that we use a range of data management tools. Lucy is going to talk about the tool that she developed, SpyHopper, to graphically track and display our sightings. And Sanjay does in-depth data analysis. Here's an example of some of that, to eliminate the duplication of data sightings, estimate events, travel patterns, disaggregate ecotypes, correlation with with whales and tides, and quantify monthly and yearly comparisons. And I should mention again that he's been talking about our data gap from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. for the past 2 years. And so I know he's keen to talk with others about using hydrophones and infrared ray cameras to increase our data collection timeframe and our predictive ability. He's quite keen in using the citizen science data to be able to do some predictive modeling. So this is an opportunity, I think, for us to expand how we might proceed to do that. I guess our headline news is that the whales are here year-round at the eastern end of Boundary Pass, including the southern residents. Here's an example of that by years. And of course, it only goes through August of 2022. More specifically, the numbers and the longitudinal pattern for the past 2 years suggest that the eastern end of Boundary Pass is an important year-round habitat for whales, including the southern resident. This is important news because the existing protection measures, notably the interim sanctuary zones off Saturna and Pender, we believe are too small. They're obviously poorly managed. And while the commercial vessel slowdown in Boundary Pass has high compliance level. It's only in place for June to November, and the whales are here year round. Because we have eyes in the water and are advocating for more rigorous protection measures, we're particularly enthusiastic about this workshop. We see it as an opportunity to integrate the visual sighting data gathered from citizen science groups like ourselves and those in the San Juans with the academic research of student researchers with the acoustic data to create a more comprehensive whale detection system and to assess the movement pathways of whales in this busy transportation corridor of the Salish Sea. Here's an example of our eyes on the water. So maybe this is a good time to turn this over to Lucy to talk about the work of our spy hopper and the work of the SF Marine Master's students. Again, to find out more about our work, please go to simris.ca, and Sanji, our data scientist, is here and I know is happy to answer any questions you have about our in-depth data analysis. So Lucy, let me turn this over to you.
Thanks, Susie. Yeah, so Spyhopper is a dynamic web app that my partner and I developed. So we use it to easily validate, visualize, and analyze the data from this sighting network. So this is our dashboard, which just quickly can see that. So all of these reports here come from the BCCSN Whale Report app. And we already have over 2,300 whale sightings, over 536 different whale days since April 2020. This is just a quick snapshot of what the data actually looks like and sort of the scope of our area. This is data for 2022, so we already have 900 reports of humpbacks and killer whales from 34 sighters and 3 different islands. Most of these reports are done in real time, so we have already contributed over 500 RAS alerts that are sent to commercial vessels in the area of presence. So on Spyhopper, all of these points, you can click on them to get more information. So some of the information is date, time, species, sighter. In some cases, we've already identified them to pod and individual level. Some of our sighters also are really good photographers, so we have attached photos where appropriate, and also due to the location, some of these also have audio clips from the SIMRA's boundary pass hydrophone. Spyhopper also has a dynamic photograph and audio catalogs, so we use this so you can look at any of the photos or audio clips for associated events. So the goal of this is so that, first of all, we can help to identify who the whales were when for each of the sightings. We're also hoping to create a very detailed catalogue of individuals and pods for photos and audio for a sort of a long-term database in this area. So I'm just going to briefly touch on some of the other research that occurs in Boundary Pass. Ruth has sent away master's students to Saturna Island for the summer for the last 3 years. I was there in 2020 and I was just focusing on whale movement through the area, as well as looking at vessel proximity to whales and infractions in the interim sanctuary zone. We had 2 students in 2021. We had Azi, who was focusing on the drivers of humpback whale movement. And she found that humpbacks were most likely to be seen in strong ebb and flood tides. We also had Caitlin, who was focusing her research on evaluating vessel management strategies. So she found relatively high participation rates for the ECHO program voluntary vessel slowdown for most vessel types. And she also found that there was an increase in compliance around the interim sanctuary zone for small recreational vessels in 2021 compared to 2020. However, there she still recorded over 350 infractions during her research. And finally, this year we have Olivia and her research assistant Lauren. So along with the regular daily whale observations, they're also incorporating acoustic data into their research. So they'll be looking at comparing southern resident killer whale call events with different levels of vessel noise. Their data will also be contributing to the deep learning AI program that will be detecting whales acoustically in the area. And that's it from me. We have time for questions. We can go now, otherwise I'll be here for the next day and a half.